I'll be honest with you, over the last couple of weeks, I've been sweating. You see, back in the early fall, here at Foundation, we do something called fantasy football for guys. And so we got, I know, like, what? Where did that come from? So we got like 9 leagues, I believe. And each league, if you're not familiar with fantasy football, is grown men sit in a room and eat pizza and just kind of hang out, and then we pretend that we draft these professional football players, and we put them on imaginary teams, and then we become like the general manager and the coach, and we decide who sits and who starts, and we get points, and then it feeds our egos, and then we can celebrate or make fun of other people that are not very great at it. And for the last couple of weeks, I have not been in the place to celebrate that I'm any good at this at all. I have been lamenting getting to this day because today is punishment day for the ones who are losers in the fantasy football league. When you got here, maybe you noticed there's a dunk tank outside. And so the last place individuals in each one of the leagues are getting dunked today in the dunk tank by the kids. So when the kids release, they'll come outside and they get to do the thing. And then everybody goes in that's a loser. And so up until this past week, I was in the running to be in this dunk tank. And so I was sweating thinking, man, we're going to open this new thing and I'm going to be in the dunk tank. Like I'm going to have to walk out after the 9 or after 11 and get in the dunk tank. Well, it turns out the Lord has favor in my life. You know what I'm saying? And this last weekend, that's right. And this last weekend, oh man, I'm telling you, I just pulled all the right levers. I might have downloaded a fantasy football app and paid $2.99 for it to tell me what to do. And I may have followed it to the letter, and I won my game, so I have avoided it. However, the rest of the losers are getting dunked today. You know what I'm saying? I thought about running, to be honest with you. I thought about just, can I call in sick? If we weren't opening this today, I might have just been sick today. But thankfully, I've avoided the dunk tank. For all of you who showed up to take your punishment like a man, good for you. I can't wait to watch you suffer. The last few weeks, we have looked at pieces of a Christmas story that doesn't feel all like Christmas. We looked at the setting of the Christmas story in a way that just brings a little more depth to the Christmas storytelling that we're so accustomed to. Today's week 3 of that. There was a man by the name of Elimelech. Elimelech was a man of God. He lived in the land that God had given the people of God, and he married a woman. This woman's name was Naomi. And Elimelech and Naomi had 2 sons, great boys. The problem became when there was a large drought or famine that kind of started spreading through their land, and it forced Elimelech as a dad to kind of make a really tough decision. There was no desire in his heart to leave the land that God had given them. There was no desire to separate himself from the rest of the nation, but he couldn't figure out, how do we survive? And so he picked up his family and he went to a foreign land where there was no drought taking place. And so he goes to this foreign land. He takes him, his wife Naomi, his 2 boys, and they settle down in this foreign land. While they're there, the boys become of age. They start searching for wives. They find wives. And so they get married. And so now this family of 2, then family of 4 becomes a family of 6. Elimelech passes away, which just leaves Naomi as a matriarch. A matriarch in this particular culture does really nothing. There's no honor to it. The one saving thing was that she had 2 sons. And in this culture, if once your husband died, once you were widowed, if you didn't have sons, you were just up the creek, no paddle, no nothing. You couldn't own property. You couldn't advocate for yourself in court. You couldn't inherit anything from your parents. None of those things were possible if you were a woman on your own. You had to have a male, either a husband or a grown son. That's the only way that it worked. So when Elimelech passed away, it was okay because she had 2 grown boys. They had wives. They were going to take care of her. Naomi would be just fine. 10 years in, the boys pass away as well. Doesn't tell us why or how. There's no cause. It just says both of her boys die. And so now we've gone from 1 widow to 3 widows. Naomi, and then her daughter-in-laws, Orpah and Ruth. Now, in this moment, as this takes place, they're wrestling with what do we do? So Naomi says, hey, look, here's the deal. I know your entire life, Orpha, Ruth, has been here, but there's nothing for us. We have no rights. We have nothing. The only thing that we could do is possibly sell our bodies. And for Naomi in particular, she was way past the age where that would be a doable thing to make a living. And so she has this conversation. She's like, we can go back to my people. Maybe my people will have some charity for us. And so they get on the road. They set out back to go to God's to God's promised land. That's where they're headed, all three of them. And then all of a sudden, Naomi realizes, this is dumb. What am I doing? What am I doing? And so she turns to her daughters-in-law, and she looks at them, and she's like, girls, I need to go back home. The two of you, you don't need to come with me. Like, you're still really young. And so you can get new husbands. Like, you can still have a life. If you follow me, you're foreigners in my homeland. Ain't no one marrying y'all. Like, our people are pretty selective when it comes to who we marry, and it's got to be people of our people. You have a better shot if you just stay here. Let me go. Both daughter-in-laws are not interested in that. Naomi, she's feeling, sad's probably not the right word, maybe empty. I mean, she has these daughter-in-laws that are willing to go on this journey with her, but she's just done. She's like, I'll just go by myself. They're not interested in listening, and so Naomi gives a pretty good speech, one that I think is filled with a lot of logic, and I think it makes sense. This is what she says to them in Ruth 1:11 through 13. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? And so she's just trying to play it out for them. She's like, do you think there's a future with me? There's not. You think I'm gonna have more kids? I'm not. I'm not gonna do that. So you should stay home. Verse 12, return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband, even if I thought there was still hope for me. If I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. She just hits him with logic. She's like, look, I get what you're trying to do, but this is not going to work for you. This is not a good idea. Like, there's no hope for you. There's no future with me for you. It just doesn't exist. So let's just go ahead and get that out of there. It's just not going to happen. And let's just play it out. Let's just say I got a husband today, and tonight I got married. Even if I immediately got pregnant, are you going to wait till those kids grow up? Like, there's nothing for you. Go home. Orpha, the Bible tells us, is weeping. She's distraught. She's heartbroken. It says she cries and cries and cries. But Orpha realizes that Naomi's doing what's best for her. She realizes that as much as it hurts, it's one thing to have to provide for one widow. It's another one for there to be a band of 3 jolly widows in a land that doesn't want them, amongst a people that won't care for them. And so she begins to walk home. Ruth can't let go. The Bible tells us that Ruth clings to Naomi. Naomi's giving her speech, and tears are flowing, and they're realizing what she's saying. And Ruth gets to a place where she's like, no, you can say all you want to. I'm not letting go. And so she just holds on to Naomi. She just grabs her, and that's all the Bible tells us. She just weeps and sobs and clings to Naomi. And it doesn't tell us how long this scene lasts Or what's the point where it kind of becomes uncomfortable? It's like, okay, all right, girl, come on, like, get yourself together. Like, oh, there's chill, Doesn't tell us. What it does tell us is that at some point, Ruth does pull herself together. She stands up and she makes eye contact with Naomi. And she says this: "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me." And so Naomi's got this great speech. She's like, look, you got no future with me. I'm by myself. The Lord has turned his hand against me. You can't come with me. Even if I got married today, what are you thinking? You're going to wait? You're not going to wait. Go home. Orpah cries her eyes out, turns around, and goes home because Naomi's doing the best thing for Orpah and for Ruth. Ruth clings to her and eventually gets herself together and looks her in the eyes and said, hey, here's the deal. Great speech, but this is what I feel about this. Your people's my people. Where you go, I go. Where you stay, I stay. You die, I die. You get buried, I get buried. Your God is my God. I ain't going nowhere. So give me your speech if you want. That's my decision, and that's what I'm going to do. Now you would think when someone says that you would feel kind of good. Like, okay, I got a little Thelma and Louise going. You know what I'm saying? Like I got a little ride or die happening here. Like we're going to make this thing work, just the two of us. But that's not what happens. And Naomi lets her come. She's like, okay, silly girl. That's what you want to do. Orpah, she chose what made sense. Ruth, for some reason, chose what would cost her everything. Ruth gains nothing by staying. She's a widow herself. She's a foreigner, at least she will be when she gets to the new land. And she is tying herself literally to bitterness. We see this not only in Naomi's speech, we also see that she calls herself bitter. When they finally get to the city, the place that Naomi's from and Elimelech is from, they finally get to their hometown. Maybe it'll be a town fairly familiar to some of you who grew up in church. I'll read it to you in chapter 1, verse 19. This is what happened. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" And so she walks in and people are like, "Naomi, where you been, girl?" Like, oh my goodness, it's Naomi. Like, is that Naomi? Like, did you see Naomi's back? She got a strange girl with her, but Naomi's back. Like, she's foreign, but Naomi, that's got to be Naomi. Did you see Naomi? I'm pretty sure that's Naomi, Verse 20. "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." And so even the most incredible loyalty speech and then action that would back up the loyalty speech by Ruth didn't change how Naomi felt about her situation. So much so, she gets home, people are excited to see her, and her response is, "Don't say my name. Don't call me that name. I'm not that girl anymore. I left here, that Naomi was full. I have come back and I am completely empty. I've got nothing. And I'll tell you why, because the Lord afflicted me. The Lord brought me back empty. The Lord has caused misfortune in my life. And so change my name, a name that resonates with the idea of bitterness. Call me Mara." I don't know how that makes Ruth feel, because Ruth is like, I don't know, I thought you were pretty great. I did that whole people, your God, my God, I die, you die. Like I thought you were pretty special, you know what I'm saying? She's like, I'm awful. But you know, something I noticed when I listened to Naomi talk through all of her trouble, because let's not downplay it, like it's awful. She lost her husband, right? She lost 2 boys. She was in a foreign land, so she didn't have any family support through that whole thing. She then realizes that she was dragging 2 young women away from their home and gonna cause them to live in just poverty for the rest of their life and probably have to sell their bodies on the streets in order to survive. She realized that she was causing that. And then she also equates God to that entire misfortune. So she tries to get rid of them, to say, hey, no, you got to go, get away from me. I can't do this to you also. And so she's in a place where it's pretty rotten. I mean, honestly, there's no Merry Christmas happening for Naomi. In her mind, she's like, this entire thing is just awful. But there's something different in the way that she processes her trouble than what I'm accustomed to hearing when I meet with people in our community, or sometimes even within our church when bad things happen. Did you hear it? It's just different. So a lot of times when I meet with someone in the midst of tragedy, if there's negative feelings in the tragedy, like sometimes it's like, oh, you know, there's a circle of life happens, loss is a part of life. Sometimes there's crisis and just trauma and tragedy, and the response isn't, oh, look what God did. The response is, if God was real, he would have never let this happen. That's how I know there is no God. That if God was a God of love, like if he actually cared and he wanted to be a part of our life, then he would have never let this happen to me. And that's how I know he's not present. But when you listen to her, it's so different. When you look at her first speech in 1 verse 13, she says, it is more bitter for me than for you. She's talking to her daughter-in-laws. It's more bitter for me than you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Do you see that? Let's look at our second one, 1:21. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Do you see that thread of faith that sits in both of those quotes? It's not a thread of disbelief, it's a thread of faith. It's a thread that says, I'm not gonna blame God and be angry at God to the point where I'm gonna say God doesn't exist. I'm just gonna be honest with him and with you about how I feel about God. God did this. God could have stopped it, but he didn't. But there is no doubt in her mind God exists. God is real, and God can hear her. That's a thread of faith. That feels a little mustard seed, small thread of faith, but that is a thread of faith. In fact, one might even say it's a thread of hope. That the God I'm angry with isn't a God that's indifferent. It's a God that's very much involved and could do something, but for some reason he has chosen not to. And I'm angry and upset about it. But I still, when I say his name, I still put uppercase G on it. I still refer to him as the Lord Almighty. She understands that God's real, but she also feels that he's distant. How about you? You ever feel like God's distant? How do you respond in those moments? Well, Ruth did what she knew how to do, which was, I'm young, and evidently in this culture, during the harvest, guys would go through and harvest grain, and the rule was if they dropped anything, they had to leave it for the poor. And the poor was allowed to come behind those that were harvesting and pick up the things that had fallen off the wagon or out of the bundles. And so Ruth just said, hey, well, I can bend over and I can get anything off the ground. So I'll just go gather and I'll do what I can do to make sure that two of us survive. And so that's what she did. Now, not everyone was okay with this. Like some people would push back. It's pretty rare actually for someone to allow a foreigner to do it in their land. Like it was more kind of for the people of God. But for some reason on the first day that she goes and no one messes with her about it. No one says, hey, this isn't for you. This is our people's. But she goes and does it. The guy who owns the property comes home and sees her and asks a question. She's like, hey, who is that? And they tell her. They tell him. They say, hey, that's the girl that came back with Naomi from Moab. She's the foreigner that came back with Naomi. And so the owner of the land, his name is Boaz. Boaz says, okay, so she's with Naomi. Let her be. In fact, the story kind of develops pretty quick. There's a number of conversations that happen where Boaz has a conversation with Ruth and kind of gives her some permission and kind of encourages her to continue to do that. And then there's more conversations. I would like for you to go and read the book of Ruth. It's really short on your own to kind of get some of these details. But there's a number of interactions. Ultimately, these interactions lead to a place where Boaz, the owner of the field, realizes that he's actually kind of close in terms of being a relative to Naomi. You see, in this culture, the rest of the world, if you were widowed, you were basically on your own. But God raised a standard for the people of God and set some expectations for how to care for widows. And one of those expectations in this particular culture was that if your husband were to die, and he had a brother, that brother would step in and make sure that family line continued. Well, Elimelech didn't have a brother, or if he did, he wasn't alive anymore. And so it would naturally fall then to their sons. Well, their sons are gone, and those sons died before they had children. And so it's really just Naomi. And then there's a distant relative that's in the village, and Boaz knows who it is. He's like, hey, this is the next closest relative. Let's check in and see if that relative wants to step in and be the guardian redeemer for that family. When you go read the Bible on your own and you kind of read through Ruth, you'll see that phrase, guardian redeemer, a couple of times. Depending on what translation you use, it might even say kinsman redeemer. And the kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer would say, hey, I'm going to be responsible for that family line. And I'm going to give, whether it's a son or in marriage, I'm going to make sure that that family continues. And I'm going to redeem that family from the tragedy that's taken place. And so Boaz says, I know the guy who's actually in line. Let's see if he wants to redeem your family. And so he gathers the elders, the leaders of the village together. He gathers them together at the city gate, and he just says, hey, it's come to my attention that Elimelech has a piece of property that needs to be redeemed, right? Because Naomi can't have it, right? She can't have property, so it doesn't belong to her anymore. And so we need someone to redeem the piece of property because it's good property and we should put it to use. We should make it for the good of people. And so the guy that's responsible, he's like, actually, I'm in line, and I would love to redeem that piece of property. And Boaz is like, that's great. That's such good news. The cool thing is there's also a girl from Moab that came with Naomi. You'll need to marry her too and make sure she has a kid. And that's when he says, no, I'm not interested in doing that. No, I have no desire. I have no desire to make a foreigner my wife. Not interested in that. The property I can do, Ruth, not interested. In fact, the Bible tells us that he says that would endanger my own family line, so I'm not interested. So Boaz says, okay, I will. He was next in line. And so he says, I'll do something with the property. And he took Ruth as his wife. And Boaz and Ruth have a son. That son's name is Obed. But Obed's not just any son. Obed, that son, eventually becomes a father. And that father eventually becomes a grandfather. And he becomes a grandfather to someone pretty special. This is the line and lineage of Jesus. This is the setting of the Christmas story. Matthew chapter 1, verse 2. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Abinadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. You see, Ruth, grandmother, King David, a foreigner who in her mind on that dirt road from Moab to Bethlehem made a decision to likely put herself in servitude or prostitution for the rest of her life, all just for the opportunity to take care of Naomi. That was her life story. And now, every single time any scholar or anyone in seminary, or honestly most Christmases, people open to read the Christmas story, they read her name. Not a name of the wife of someone who passed away as a result of a drought, lost their dad, and had a sad story on the side of the road, but the wife of Boaz, grandmother and grandfather of David, the most famous king in the history of the people of Israel. It's always easy, I think, when we read stories, especially in the creation of the need for Jesus, which is what we find in the Old Testament. I think it's so easy for us to find ourselves in these stories. Maybe you are here and you're Naomi, that you are tired, that you are worn out, and honestly, your weariness has created some resentment and maybe even some bitterness. And it makes sense when you look at the circumstances that you're in. Who could be a champ through all of them? And you sit here and you wonder, God, how many more hits can I take? Like I'm barely getting up off the mat each and every day. Maybe you just feel forgotten. But I want you to hear something. God's not done with you. I know it might feel like God's done with you. God is not done with you. Or maybe you hear this story and you feel like Ruth's my girl. You feel a little overlooked. You feel ordinary, maybe even unseen. And you're just wondering, how in the world could I make a difference anywhere? I'm just a daughter-in-law that's a footnote in this family tree. I want you to know that your faithfulness matters more than you know. And then there are some of you, though, that are Boaz. You have influence. You're in a place of prosperity in your life right now. You probably look back on 2025 and think, man, look what God did. Maybe you would even characterize the last year as one of the highlights of your entire life. That you would look at it and just say, man, the blessings that God continues to pour out on me and my family is just abundant. And it's just through the roof. And you're like, man, I don't even want to reset the calendar because I would hate for this to reset. Like, this life is so good. And for you, I would tell you the reason that you're in that place is not for you to feel comfortable, but for you to leverage those blessings to be someone else's redeemer. that there's someone else in your life that you are now well positioned to step into their life and redeem what seems to be falling apart. We get it so twisted when we think that God blesses us for our own benefit. The story of God is that blessing is given so that blessing can be then given. That you would have eyes to see the hurting and the broken. That you would be available to step in. Truth is, though, Ruth didn't fix Naomi's pain. Like when Ruth gave her speech, incredible speech, by the way, just wild. When she gives her speech, it didn't change anything from Naomi. In fact, the only thing that it might have changed is she stopped saying, okay, go home. Finally, she's like, fine, if you want to come. She just Eeyored her way to Bethlehem. It didn't change anything for her. It didn't solve her problem. They were still widows. They still had nothing. They still could inherit nothing. They still couldn't represent themselves. They had no legal standing. It solved nothing. It didn't change their situation overnight. The only thing Ruth did when she made her declaration is she stayed. She stayed when Naomi was bitter. Can you imagine leaving your family's land? Following someone? Like, I get it if she's inspiring. If she's like, you know what, we're going to go take on the world together. Just me and you, girl. It's us against the world. But it isn't. She walks into Bethlehem, and she's like, oh, yeah, by the way, her name is Ruth. Call me Mara. Call me bitter. Don't even call me by my name. Like, who wants to sit around that all day? Who wants to wake up in the morning and say, hey, by the way, I'm a widow too, or did you forget your son that you're mourning was also my husband? Like, I lost somebody too. But no. Ruth just simply stayed. She just stayed. She stayed when she was bitter. She stayed when God felt distant. She stayed when there was no visible reward in sight. The hardest part is she stayed without knowing what staying would actually lead to. But that's just it. She wasn't staying for the outcome, was she? She was staying because she saw value in the human being sitting across from her on that dusty road between Moab and Bethlehem. And she stayed for her. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do isn't to move forward. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is to refuse to walk away. And honestly, that's Christmas. That is Christmas. It is God looking at a world that rejected him, said we can do it without you, said we can build a future without you, separated themselves from him. And what was his response? He said, I ain't going nowhere. Even while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. In other words, without any proof that it would make a difference, Jesus gives his life on the cross. Without any evidence any of us would care, he gives his life for us. Without any evidence that any of us would change our lives to follow him and accept this sacrifice, he still did it anyway. That's Christmas. Like him saying, I'm going to make good on my promise of Christmas, Emmanuel, which means God with us. In other words, God staying with us, regardless of how we see him, treat him, think about him, think he's afflicted us, left us, delivered us, embittered us, whatever it is he's done with us. He's saying, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Where you go, I'm going. Where you want to make your people, I'm making my people. Here's the thing, I don't have to die with you because I already died for you, but I will be with you when you pass away with your last breath. And if you want, I will wake you up with a new life. I'm staying. That's Christmas. That's Christmas. Truth is, God stayed. So maybe the question for you this Christmas isn't, what next step do I need to take? Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's harder. Let me ask you some really difficult questions. What are you tempted to walk away from that you know you shouldn't? Is it a marriage that you're just thinking, let me get through the holidays, it'll be easier for the kids, but I don't want to spend my next 20 years dealing with a guy who refuses to talk about his feelings and go to counseling? Is that where you're at? Now, I don't want you to hear me if you're in a place where you're in danger in an abusive relationship. I'm not saying that, so take that out. If that's it, you come find me and we'll deal with that together. There will not be staying. But excluding that situation, you should stay. You should stay because Christmas is about miracles. It's about hard work. It's about resurrection as much as it's about new birth. It's about God showing up and showing us the example. It's about God saying, hey, things are going to be hard. In fact, over and over again, Jesus tells us this. He's like, wind is going to come and it's going to beat against your life. Water is going to rise up and it's going to feel like you're drowning. Rain is going to beat against your house. And whether or not you survive that is going to come down to one thing. Did you hear what I told you and put it into practice, or didn't you? And so he's saying, hey, stay. Put what I say to you into practice. Stop just listening to what I say. Do what I say. Put it into practice. Stay. Maybe it's a relationship that challenges you, but the challenge has become just too much work, and so you're just going to ghost them. You're going to walk away. You're going to stop responding to the text because it makes you a little uncomfortable. Why would we do that to ourselves? Why would we push away people that want to make us better? Why would we push away someone that helps us sit in our uncomfortableness in a way that creates positive change? Why would we do that? Just so it's easier? No. Stay. Stay. Stay where you're challenged. Stay where they push you. Stay where they challenge you. Stay where they make you uncomfortable. Stay where they question your life choices, that honestly someone should question your life choices. Stay. Or maybe it's your faith you're thinking about walking away from because you feel like you aren't good enough, or you'll never be good enough, or honestly, you're just not spiritually mature like Naomi was, and you're like, hey, life is bad, God must not be real. I can't sit in a place and say, life sucks, and God is here. I can't get there. Stay. You should stay. And it's okay to have the conversation Naomi did. It's okay to look at God and say, why'd you do this to me? It's okay to have a screaming fit and a hissy fit, because the truth is, when you're talking to him, that capital G you keep putting on his name, or the capital L or the capital A in Almighty, as you are letting your heart, just sharing with him exactly how just tumultuous things are in your life and how difficult things are in your life, as you're sharing all that with him, you're still acknowledging he's God and you're not. And that's still a little thread of faith. From that thread of faith, God can do immeasurably more than you could think or imagine. You know, the truth is, as we prepare ourselves to celebrate in faith on Wednesday, one of the most important moments in human history, and how important it is for us to gather together as a family of believers to celebrate that day, it's enormous. The importance behind the church on a Christmas Eve or an Easter, it's through the roof. And as we prepare to celebrate that day, as we prepare our hearts to be together on that day, and it will be an incredible celebration Wednesday. The truth is, when we talk about Christmas, there's also this process and moment of waiting to get to that Wednesday, to get to Christmas Eve, to get to Thursday, and we've got to acknowledge that Merry Christmas every single year might not feel merry, even though there's a lot of joy and hope wrapped up in it. The season of waiting sometimes is a season of agony, and it's a season of just heartbreak. It's a season of lament. But as the church, we do not pretend. We do not package our lament with bows and wrapping paper and pretend it's not there. We're honest about it, because this story of Naomi and Ruth is a Christmas story. It's a story that spans decades of tragedy, but ends with redemption. But you have to wait on the redemption. When we gather as a family of believers on Wednesday to celebrate that moment in human history, for some of you, you will still be waiting on that redemption. But that will not change what we acknowledge and celebrate, that there's still a capital G on our God, that there's still a capital L in our Lord, and that He still is the Almighty. And there is a promise. There is a kinsman redeemer with your name on it, a guardian redeemer with your heart in their hands. And redemption is coming. Sometimes Merry Christmas is simply a season of waiting. So stay. Even if God feels distant. Maybe that distance is Him working ahead of you, working for you in your future. Maybe this could become your quote. I'll read it to you again from Ruth. Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Ruth, foreigner, a widow, grandmother of King David, responsible for the line and lineage of Jesus Christ. I would say staying was a really great decision. One led by God, confirmed by Jesus, and now celebrated on the 25th of December by every single follower of Jesus worldwide. All because she stayed.